Okay, so can I welcome everybody and anybody that's residents that are watching us at home to the People Scrutiny meeting. Today is Tuesday the 30th of September, and we've got officers in front of us, and we're going to be talking today and discussing today the community meals review, and also wellbeing and prevention, and the strategy to approach to wellbeing and prevention for our residents. So shall I get the officers to introduce themselves? So can I ask the officers to introduce themselves? Jane, do you want to start?
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jane Rogers. I'm the Strategic Director for Social Care and Health. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Naomi Lovesay, Service Manager for Direct Care Services.
I'm Jenny Jenkins, Head of Adult Services.
And I'm Ian Chandler. I'm a Cabinet Member for Social Care Safeguarding and Accessible Health Services.
Thank you. Can I move on to the agenda? So apologies for absence. I'm aware that Councillor Stevens, Councillor Riley, and we've got substitutes for both, haven't we? So we've got Councillor Peter Strong for Maria Stevens and Councillor Bond for Councillor Riley. So we move on then to declarations of interest. Should we take that if the need arises, or? Yeah, okay. Have we got anybody to join us as part of the public open forum? No? Okay. So for anybody watching at home, we've actually sort of rejigged the agenda. So the first item, the next item on the agenda is going to be community meals and a scrutiny of the recent review to that. So can I ask who's going to introduce it? Is it Councillor Chandler? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of the committee. I'm just going to do a brief introduction to say why we did the review. Just last year, when we were developing the budget, we identified it as a budget pressure was the one of the budget pressures, should I say, in social care was the cost, the subsidy that we're putting into the community meals service. But at that time, we felt this wasn't the type of service that you'd want to take a knee-jerk reaction to. So we felt it merited a more considered review about the value of the service and whether there are any alternative models that might be better for residents, both within in-house provision, but also looking at external provision in terms of commercial meal deliveries. So we developed terms of reference for the review, and we shared the terms of reference with the chair of People's Scrutiny Committee, and we agreed that the outcome of that first phase review should come to this committee for examination, not knowing at that stage what the recommendations might be, and the recommendations might have been quite radical, or they might have been quite less so. As you've read the papers, you'll see that the conclusion is that we should keep the service in-house, but to modernise it to improve the experience of those receiving the meals, as well as looking at how we can make more efficiencies to reduce the subsidy. But that's why we're here, and I'm sure it will be of interest to members and to the public. So in terms of the review itself, I'm going to hand over to Naomi, who led the review and is going to tell us a little bit more about what it uncovered and what the recommendations are. So thank you.
Great, thank you. So we started the review earlier this summer in the springtime, and really we wanted to get an overarching sort of picture of where the service was and the opportunities for potentially moving this service into a slightly different model. So in terms of the summary, there was some key opportunities that have been identified. What we found is that the service absolutely is warranted and is extremely highly recommended and received very good feedback from the service users we engaged with. So there was a 45% response rate when we looked at the service users and their thoughts around the service. They felt that very much not only did the service provide them with a nutritional hot meal, which I think is absolutely key when we know the benefits around nutrition and hydration for people in terms of their physical and psychological and emotional well-being, but also that they found that they actually themselves felt that they enjoyed having that hot meal. They felt it was a balanced and nutritional for them. They felt it was the appropriate size, that they were hot. And again, especially in the cold weather we're now approaching, that's absolutely key. They also felt it was value for money. And I think one of the other key factors was actually that engagement with a person in relation to having that as contact for people who can be quite socially isolated. So essentially, it is more than just a hot meal that we are providing our residents. Majority of people wanted, and 90% felt they actually wanted a lunchtime meal, because that was one of the considerations that we weren't sure. Did people actually want the hot meal in the lunchtime, or actually would they prefer it in the evening? So it was interesting that actually most people felt that the majority of people felt they enjoyed the lunchtime meal. A few people, I would say sort of 30%, so a third of people felt that perhaps a salad or ploughmans could be quite a nice option instead of a hot meal during the very hot weather. However, there was very little uptake, and only 11% would really have wanted a further sandwich and tea call, or perhaps a packed tea call for a sandwich in an evening. That actually it was that one hot meal was the key to actually what they felt they would really, really like with this service continuing. As we said, the satisfaction in relation to the staff and the support that they get from the staff was highly commended. And actually we did, time for a conversation was one of the comments. All drivers have a natter as well as bringing a meal, and I think that's the key, is in actually that interaction with a person through the day, which can be quite lonely for people and isolating at times. So in relation to the service user satisfaction, it was very good. We have looked at some in terms of the service delivery model, that I think is where we have an opportunity for development, particularly in relation to the model in which we're delivering in terms of not only the vehicles. So I think we are using vehicles that some are EV, and some though have diesel ovens within them. And if we think of trying to reduce our carbon footprint, we know there's an opportunity that we could look at moving all vehicles onto an EV footing, and we could actually use a model of delivery through a plug-in hot box rather than a diesel oven which regenerates the food, or a hot box which doesn't maintain the temperature. It's just like a standard picnic bag essentially, which actually then doesn't keep the food as hot as we would like it to be kept. So the ability to have a new model was something that has been identified. We did test it and pilot it as part of the review, and certainly the feedback from the staff at this point was incredibly positive. They felt it made their job easier, and actually the temperatures of the food were at a much more satisfactory level, and in line with all the environmental health requirements. Obviously there is a cost to the service, and as Councillor Chandler's mentioned, is that is around the subsidy. So at the moment we do pay a significant subsidy, and it's looking this year, it's predicted that the subsidy will be about £341,000. We absolutely feel that through remodelling of the service, there is an opportunity to create some efficiencies. We've been benchmarking with other local authorities, and a similar local authority in terms of size and the amount of meals that's delivered is Torvine, and their subsidy is only a third of ours. So that we do feel we've got some real opportunities, and they use EV vehicles with plug-in hot box. So we feel by looking and working collaboratively on a wider scale, there are some opportunities. We're also keen again to look at the provider of the meal as part of a phase 2 of this project. If it's approved, that we feel that there is an opportunity again to potentially partner and look with locally produced food to support the local economy, as well as then reduce the carbon footprint in terms of that purchasing of the meals as well. So, in terms of the operational model, it is we feel being demonstrated as a highly successful. We did look at a sort of synopsis of people that actually, there's out of the 226 people that receive a meal, only 71 people don't have any other care and support. And we looked at how much they would cost if we were to put in perhaps a 30-minute domiciliary care call as a comparison to ensure they had a hot meal in the day, and that in itself would cost £221,000 just for those 70 cohort of 70 people. We also feel that going forward, the other remaining people within sort of the 150 people remaining, they may not actually have a care call at lunchtime, so they may have needed an increase in care call. So again, it could have been higher, an actual higher and inflated, rate of that. So although there is a subsidy, it is cost mitigating in relation to other areas of social care that it could significantly impact on. So as part of where we've got to in terms of the phase 1 is we do feel that there is a justifiable need for the service. We are creating and mitigating pressures on other aspects of social care. However, we absolutely recognise that there is work that we need to do within the service to transform and to put it onto a more sustainable footing in relation to both financially and the service operating model. And that is what we're proposing as the phase 2 would be to actually implement all the recommendations that are highlighted in at the end of the report. Something. Okay.
Thank you, Naomi. Jenny, do you want to come in on anything? Or?
Thank you, Naomi. So thanks for that detailed overview. There's a lot of information in the report, and essentially the service is very valued, it's very important, and there are opportunities now for us to review the operating model and generate some efficiencies within the model. We don't want to just increase the price for people because we're already charging £6.50, and there is a limit at which it becomes unaffordable for people. So we're very aware of that. So we're really looking at building efficiencies within that service model to make sure that we can maintain the service and also that we target it appropriately, because we are subsidising it. So we need to make sure it's targeted at the right people who receive the service for the right reason. And that's part of our second phase of the review. So it was a really interesting exercise for us to do that initial deep dive into the service and identify the opportunities that we've got to take it forward and generate that meaningful service that we know people value in Monmouthshire.
Thank you. I can see that Councillor Howarth has got his hand up, so I'll come to him and then Councillor Jones after. Can I just say that I thought it was a very balanced report. It actually it took you through the sort of logic of why you needed to do it, but also the pros and cons of both sort of probably outcomes that might be available and possibilities for the future. I'm quite interested in if you're going to kind of change over to more EV cars or EV vans, the costings of that and how they will be mitigated. But I'm going to, before we go into sort of questions, can I just pass over to Councillor Howarth, because I know that he's got to leave to go to a dental appointment. So we'll pass over to Simon and then to Penny if I can.
Borida, good morning everyone, and thank you for a summary now of where we're going to go with Meals on Wheels, we'll call it. Just a quick question there, which I I did get, but there was part of it I don't think was answered correctly on the basis of is we consulted with how other local authorities carried out the service, and we used Torvine, and was it a third less, I think, Naomi, you said there, or they operate 2/3 lesser than what we can operate the system. We are a rural county, and the numbers game is important, because if you have numbers from an area which is, let's say, a town or an urban basis, it is probably easy to deliver that service. But as a rural county, which we are, and a lot of our areas quite densely populated, but they still are rural compared to, let's say, look at Torvine, Henkles, them areas around Torvine, you go up to Blenavon and them areas. We are totally different. Have we compared our model that we're using now then to, let's say, another area than Wales? And I always use Denbighshire, how they operate this kind of Meals on Wheels, because many years we've always said Denbighshire has the same platform as us on its basis of how it's built up in its capacity as a population. We used Torvine. You said that was anybody else we used. That's my question. And is it not better perhaps to use an area how they operate on the same level as we? Because that 2/3 is a massive difference on the cost. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Howarth. It's a good question. I think we were drawing the comparison with Torvine by way of learning. So we know that there are significant differences, particularly in the geography around Monmouthshire, between Monmouthshire and Torvine. But it's still an interesting fact that they have a much a lesser subsidy than we do. So we want to learn from that, but we appreciate 100% that there's not, it's not going to be like for like, and there's going to be key differences. I think when we move into the second phase of the review, that will give us the opportunity to really look in more detail at other local authorities such as Denbighshire, like you've suggested, that is a little bit more like for like. I mean, we're not at this point, we kept it just to the Gwent authorities because we've got that direct connection. We can easily engage with them. We know which of the Gwent local authorities provides community meals. But as we move into the second phase, we can branch out a little further to help us. I think that comparison with Torvine is just, it gives us another window. It gives us an opportunity to ask them how they do it. If there's anything that we can learn from that we can bring into phase two, all well and good. If it's just too different, then fair enough. We won't be able to do that. But thanks for that, and the identification of Denbighshire. Yeah, it's a good comparative, a good comparator for Monmouthshire.
Councillor Howarth, do you want to come back, or have you got another question? No. Okay. I'll move on to Councillor Penny Jones then.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this review. It's really welcome, and it's so pleasing to know that we're going to be one of the few LAs carrying on in the UK. One of 29% of local authorities supplying this service. So that's excellent, and I'm really pleased. And also that you're putting the resident at the heart of the review. My question really is about the type of training as you're aligning this service with domiciliary care, which is so important. To take that part of it away would be not only more expensive, as you've done the costings, but also it would be detrimental to each resident, because that time spent with them is absolutely vital, sometimes the only time of the day that they see anybody. So, but my question is, what type of training will the drivers, I think they're called, aren't they, the carriers, the drivers, will have to enable them to deal with problems, for instance, that they may incur when they go to a house?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that question. So absolutely, they all undergo a robust induction. So we work very closely with our workforce development team. They all have the mandatory training, but they also have additional training in relation to things like safeguarding. Often they are the first person to notice concerns with safeguarding, perhaps self-neglect. They also have experience in first aid. They're all first aid trained, because again, often they will come up and find somebody who's fallen. So they are equipped to deal with that. On the reflective side, when they come in, obviously they would be supported through senior drivers if they were to come across somebody who was unfortunately unwell or had fallen. And they would then obviously have that support when they came back, should they need it to debrief, and that supervision. But we're always working closely. And I think as part of phase 1 and moving to phase 2, a whole sort of piece around workforce planning to align to any new service model and identifying, is there any other opportunities and gaps in sort of knowledge that would support drivers is absolutely going to be key as we move forward as well. Thanks.
Penny, do you want to come back? Can I just say, Naomi, thanks for that. Actually, we get the whole sort of theme running through. It isn't just about the meal. It's about the relationship between the person delivering the meal and actually that person that could, it could be the only person they see, in that day. But also, it highlights if there are little things that aren't quite right, then that can be flagged up to sort of relatives or to the relevant bodies. So thank you for that. Can I move on to Councillor Bond then, please?
Thank you, Chair. Really good report, and as has been said, you can follow the logic, and really good to use best practice and benchmarking. Good actions and the improvement plan you've put, I think it's actually section 15, but you've referred to previously to look at section 14, but I think another section must have come in somewhere along the line. But I'm just looking at section 15 now, and it says, so the first question is, please, so really good recommendations and plans and actions to complete phase 2, and I guess it says it's starting in October 25, which is tomorrow. So wondered if you've got enough resource to do all this. For example, you're trying to find it, you want a digital solution, action 9, to help manage stock control and inventory, and then you've got lots of reviews and additional conversations and reports and reviews and liaison with different groups. Also, you've put in there about particularly talking section item 14 or action 14 said about Torvine, so I guess you can add Denbighshire to that one about relating to that. So really, have you got the resource to complete all these things, or is it going to be taking extra resource, please? And the other question is around the IIA. Page 69, first of all, I see that the biggest numbers is now in Caldecott, so I wonder why you think that is, but 19,000 I think it was. So on the IIA, it says that in section 6, it's slightly different to the other IIA for the other report, integrated impact assessment, for people at home. So the wording for section 6 includes different groups, and one of those are care leavers and care experienced people, which hasn't been responded to in your table. So I wonder, do we have any legal impact in that area? I guess not, because they're probably covered by other services. But just wonder if what the response is about care leavers and care experienced people. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. The first question regarding, the sufficiency of resources to help us with the second phase. Our intention is to work within existing resources, but by bringing a small project team together from our adult social care department, but also from drivers, passenger transport, driver section. Sorry, can't remember the name of it. Which one? Passenger transport unit, and the catering aspect as well, including we've got Naomi now, who's the lead for direct services. So this is right under her sort of specific brief. So with working together across the directorates and those people who are directly involved in this, I think we're confident that we have got the existing resource within our current allocation. We did call on some external, we hired somebody basically to really, who had a really good knowledge of the sector to help us with the first phase. And we can call on that person again, but it would be within existing resources. So no particular resource request linked to this report. We will do it through working together collaboratively across the directorates within our existing budget allocation at the moment. And hopefully, we've got lots of skill and knowledge within our drivers, but also within our services, good knowledge of the people that we provide the meals to. So I think, with pulling all that together, we can do something really great in phase 2 and really come through with a much more modernised service, which will be more efficient and support people in the best way that we can, continuing this really valued service. The specific question around the use of AI and digitalisation for the service, we've got somebody who currently works under Naomi who's got those skills and is keen to turn his attention to this project as well. So I think we've got what we need to achieve what needs to be done within phase 2. Okay.
Thank you, Jane. I think the other question was about care leavers.
Yes, thank you. The majority of the meals that are provided are to those who are slightly more elderly. There are some younger people who receive them. To my knowledge, there are no care leavers who receive community meals. So there was no direct impact on care experienced people. That's not to say that there may be care experienced people within the cohort of people receiving meals, but we just wouldn't know, because obviously care experienced people, as it is referred to in our impact assessments, are not just our own care experienced people, but care experienced people more widely. And we do know that if people do have care experience within their particular individual biographies, it can lead to increased isolation, poorer health outcomes on a wider scale. So, making sure that we've got services that do serve the community, whoever those individuals might be and whatever their backgrounds are, I think it's just another part of our overall service offer within the directorate that really does try to make sure that we are meeting the needs of all our residents, particularly those who might have more vulnerabilities, inherent vulnerabilities. So I hope that sort of answers it, and maybe on reflection we could have perhaps brought that out more in the integrated impact assessment. So we will do an updated one before this travels further. Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you, Jane. Can I bring in Councillor Butler? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come back?
Yeah, Jill, sorry, I didn't...
Sorry, just to say, I just think the two versions of the two documents that are presented before us today, IIAs, might be different, and that's why you weren't prompted. That's all, I think, to answer that question. But thank you very much for your answers. The other question was about Caldecott, and Caldecott numbers seem to have gone up significantly, and I wondered if you had a thought about that. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I'm honest, no, it fluctuates. We don't know why in particular area. It's dynamic, it's changing constantly. Obviously, it's based on assessed need, and at the moment that is obviously a large population area where there's been an assessed need for the community meals. it has changed, and I expect if we were to review the data again in a year's time, it may well have developed and changed again. So it is something that we're not sure exactly why that is in that area, as I say, but it does change continuously and on a daily basis as well with the referrals that we do get.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, can I bring in Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, officers, for a very interesting report. I just wanted to ask Naomi, who mentioned something about locally based foods, how that fits into the service, how much of locally based food is actually put into the meals. And I have to confess, I don't, and for the benefit of those at home, where are the meals prepared? How many people are actually employed in preparing the meals? And the other one is I don't fully understand the mechanism for residents to use the service. Perhaps you could expand on that as well, please.
Sure, no problem. Thank you for your questions. So in terms of the food at the moment, we purchase it from a supplier who is not locally based. They're a large company that provide frozen plated meals. So as part of phase 2, what we're really keen to look at is how that could be generated locally and delivered locally. I think we've got some opportunities. I think some initial work was done historically around could it be done from a scratch kitchen. At the end of that review, it wasn't deemed a sustainable option at that time, but that's not to say there couldn't be an opportunity to look at tendering and going through a procurement contract with a more locally produced supplier, and to consider how and what opportunities we've got on that. So I think that the detail of that would need to be done as part of the phase 2 project. In relation to your question around the what was the second? Sorry.
Referral, how do people get referred?
Referral, yeah.
Because I do get asked by people, how do I get them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, at the moment, they are referred via our adult social care intake. So our duty, or the social worker, the therapist, the social care assessor, who is part of that adult services team, they do have to have an assessed need, although it is a chargeable service. Again, as part of phase 2, that I think it's around considering, is that the right approach, or actually is there an opportunity of could we consider self-referral? How would that look in terms of the operating model, the numbers? We're really looking to try and prevent people getting deconditioned, losing independence. We want to maintain independence, and is More Meals essentially a service that could be considered in that preventative, early intervention, prevention, well-being aspect? And I think again those opportunities will be considered and much more in detail in relation to phase 2 and how that could look, and if we wanted to consider that as a future operating model going forward.
Thank you for that. Being recently widowed myself, I mean, I'm fortunate. I have 2 sons living with me, so we're a family of 3. But I have many friends who are now widowed. They're still, young and active. But actually, you're talking about sort of long-term prevention. It becomes very, very easy to think, oh no, I can't be bothered to make something, or I'll just, have something unhealthy from wherever. In terms of long-term health and prevention, I think this is a really important area that we could look into. So I'm very glad to hear that you're looking at these things in phase 2. Thank you.
Lovely. Is there anybody else that wants to come back, or are we happy with Councillor Jones?
Chair, just a comment. We used to provide our own meals, because councillors who were lucky enough to have been here long term used to go for tasting sessions. They were absolutely delicious. And Pauline was overseeing that, of course. But it is something you could consider perhaps because of employment as well. It incorporates a lot of other aspects. So, thank you.
I don't think, yeah, absolutely. And I think the opportunities we've got moving forward. I think nothing's off the table, and I think it's keeping an open mind and being able to, we've got foundations of a brilliant service, and it is clearly delivering and meeting a need. And I think it is now we've got those foundations to really build on, and what that looks like going forward. I think there's huge potential, I think, for Mom Meals in both the current where we are, but then those, as you say, exploring what else can influence not just the people, the Monmouthshire Meals community supports in terms of the people being delivered the hot meal, but then in that wider Monmouthshire resident and how that can support the wider community as well. Thanks.
I'm just scrolling through the report to find the recommendations that we need to sort of consider for the committee, and there we go. So it's
quite a detailed report.
Just providing feedback and comment.
Yeah. Provide feedback.
So really, we're just sort of providing sort of feedback and comment. Really quite interested in the sort of local based opportunities that might come up from the review. I hope that, if this report is acknowledged sort of in the wider sort of sphere of any residents or the public are watching, that it provides some reassurance that Monmouthshire aren't going to just sweep away sort of community meals, but we are looking at other ways of delivering a vital sort of service, really. So if people are happy with the sort of questions that we've raised in the discussion, we can sort of thank the officers in front of us and then move on to the next item. Is that okay? Yeah, are we happy with that?
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Chair.
Naomi and Jenny, and I know Jane's probably staying. Ian's staying for the next item, but thank you very much. We're just getting a bit rearranged at the minute, so if you just give us a couple of minutes. Sorry.
It's different for me because I just go off to the individual report.
Oh, right, so I got the ModGov thing, yeah.
It doesn't matter, it's whatever's you're used
Well, maybe, perhaps I should bring my tablet-y thing in or something, but anyway. Okay.
I tend to go off the council's website. It's more public, see you just click on it.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to sort of resume? Nikki, would you mind introducing yourself so that obviously for people that are watching at home or other members of the Scrutiny Committee that are at home as well? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nikki Needle and I'm the Integrated Wellbeing Network Lead representing Monmouthshire on the regional programme.
Okay, so this part of the meeting is to look at the report and to scrutinise the draft strategy and provide comment and feedback. Can Councillor Chandler, are you going to introduce it for us? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, thank you, members of the committee and those watching. This is... I'm really pleased that we're bringing this report to you and this strategy, because it's something we've been working on for some time, and you'll have been aware of that because of other issues. We had a members' seminar earlier this year where we went through some of our earlier thinking on this, and we've referred to it in different forums. But essentially, this strategy that we're bringing to you, which we want to refine and get adopted by Cabinet, so it becomes part of our suite of enabling strategies for how we're going to deliver our community and corporate plan. But also, it in many ways, it's more than that, because actually it represents quite a long-term approach for how the council is seeking to improve the well-being of its residents over the long term, as well as in doing that, reducing or delaying the call for people to call on statutory services, and then therefore making our statutory services more sustainable in the long term. So it is very much a long-term approach that is going to have an impact well beyond this administration, which is why we've spent quite a bit of time pulling it together and trying to involve as many people as possible in pulling it together. And as the report sets out and the strategy sets out, our overall aim here is that residents, especially our more vulnerable and deprived residents, are enabled to live healthier and independently for longer, boosting their well-being as well as delaying or reducing their call on statutory services. What sets this apart, I think, from other things that we've done is this isn't a social care strategy. This is a whole authority strategy. And it's about bringing together the different parts of the authority, all the different directorates and departments, in terms of coordinating, aligning their work so that all of them play a part in boosting well-being, boosting independence, and no matter where their interactions are with residents. And then beyond just the local authority is about how we also work with partners, whether it's third sector partners or statutory partners within the region, to also boost people's well-being. So in terms of that, just setting the scene, this represents quite a different approach to maybe what we've done before. And that's why it's we've taken our time. That's why we're bringing it forward, not just as a members' seminar earlier this year, but we bring this forward to you for more detailed scrutiny prior to taking it to Cabinet. So that's sort of sets the scene of why we're doing it and our scope of our ambition. But I would like to hand over to Jane and Nikki just to talk more about the detail of the strategy and how it goes forward. So who's going to kick off? Jane, you can.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chandler. You've covered a lot of the key points there, and I feel that also that same sense of really pleased to be able to talk about this strategy today. Partly because its ambition is to be that whole authority, cross-directorate approach to bringing a coordinated working plan to get better outcomes for our residents, taking a longer-term approach than just meeting immediate presenting needs. I would say that we've got a really good track record within Monmouthshire of working in that early help, community-based wellbeing support. But what's different here is I think that we're trying to really bring, directorates together to get that coordination, to make sure that we're really working to a common purpose, to ensure that we're using data and data insights effectively, so that we can really understand our communities at a more granular level, to make sure that we're really targeting our efforts. I think we need that sense of a really clear practice model about how we engage people, particularly those who may have more vulnerabilities. We need to pull together in terms of understanding our approach to working in partnership, both through a commissioning framework, understanding our needs from a preventative perspective, so that we're really commissioning and engaging with third sector organisations to work in a really outcome-focused way around points of concern. We need to be really developing ways of engaging and communicating with communities and with individual residents, so we're better at understanding what communities want and need and what might work from them, and working in a collaborative way. All these things are in place in pockets across the council, but I think the strategy really seeks to bring it together in a more strategic and aligned way. And that gives us a really good platform, both to communicate our ambitions with residents, but also with partners as well. I just think it's a really interesting time at the moment from a policy point of view. Things are really coming more to the fore. This idea of working, really upstream to get good wellbeing outcomes for people is at the heart of the Social Services Wellbeing Act, but it's also implicit and explicitly represented with the Future Gens legislation. And also health now really starting to develop their own policy framework around working at a much more preventatively and targeted way with individuals who have known health vulnerabilities. And I have to say that includes social isolation and loneliness, as well as physical illness or disability. So it just feels like a really good moment in time to bring this forward. The outcomes that we're seeking are around reducing and delaying the call on formal care and support. We are living in an ageing demographically orientated county, or people are getting older within our county, and that brings with it, increasing vulnerabilities around chronic and ill health, working with overlaying disability and health needs, but also that sort of isolation and loneliness, which can affect our older population. But, there are ways that we can work early with people to try and tackle some of those things early. And we know the earlier that we can get in the right support, the longer it does enable people to live healthier and more independent lives. The strategy that we were just talking about, the Mom Meals, was just an example of that, isn't it? Really, really making sure that people have what they need to stay independent, to keep their own autonomy and their sense of agency right through. And to support, unpaid carers as part of that as well. We've put together an initial implementation plan. We've put together some high-level outcomes that we're seeking to achieve from a people point of view, because, of course, that's the focus. It can bring around organisational benefits, but actually it's the outcomes for people that we're really interested in, and supporting people to remain healthier and independent longer in their own homes, tackling the health inequalities that still exist across our communities, and making sure that people have that opportunity to connect with nature, to connect with each other, to be physically active, to be mentally stimulated, and to feel part and parcel of their own communities is a real fundamental right that we all have, and supports good health and wellbeing outcomes for people and for communities at a wider level. So hopefully you've all had that opportunity to read the strategy and to read what we've put forward as initial implementation plan, so that you feel that it's not only more words around preventative and early help, but you can see the beginnings of what might become an evolving implementation plan, with areas that we can feel like working together across the council we can intervene to make this sort of more of a reality, and not just the sort of the policy and the words on a page. Thank you.
And does Nikki need to say anything? No. Okay. So I can see that we've got some hands up. So thank you very much for the report. Really interesting reading. What a huge task, really, to, given our ageing population, our aspirations to become an age-friendly county as well. And it all, hopefully, all fits together. And so we need to make this a sort of document that actually provides really good outcomes for our residents. So I'll ask Councillor Bond to go first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Could I please ask Councillor Jones to go first and then go second? I'd prefer that way, please, if that's okay. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Jones?
Being asked a lot of favours today, but yes, I'll get a halo soon. Yes, thank you so much for this report. It's very welcome. The ethos, of course, is to work collaboratively to ensure that there's a vibrant mix of accessible community facilities and venues across the county to support aims for wellbeing strategy. So that's fantastic. But where are the town and in my case, community councils? Because we offer a lot. We actually support and fund community projects such as Coffee and Computers, which I know Councillor Chandler went to yesterday in my ward, and it's a very successful kind of project whereby the older people learn digital skills and IT skills and have coffee. So it encompasses, and cake I may add, it encompasses everything because it gets rid of social isolation in it. It gives people an opportunity to open up their forms of communication. But we do that. But we do a lot more as well. And I know that we haven't been involved. So in your working parties, I'd really, really like a representative from the community councils, even if it's a councillor who's a community council, if other residents won't offer to join. But it really is essential. We are on the ground. We know best about places and things. We can help an awful lot. So that's just a plea on behalf of town and community councils. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. I'm trying to find reference to it in the strategy, and I'm not sure whether there is, but they were absolutely within the conversations within our working group. We know that it's at that level, that town and community council level, committee level, that you know your populations, don't you? You know what works in your localities, and we know also that you provide at that town and community council level, really good opportunities for people to engage and express themselves in terms of their views, but also those services as well. So we're absolutely. I mean, we're at draft sort of stage here. We know we've got a lot of work ahead. But town and community councils are absolutely within our thinking, and we've got the community development team,
yes,
right in the heart of this, and I know they directly engage,
good,
with town and community councils. So thank you for bringing that point out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Penny, for that. Have you got a follow-up question?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. I was with Councillor Chandler yesterday as well, and actually, it was really, really interesting. The group of people that were there. It wasn't just about tea and cake, but it is about tea and cake. But it's actually about sharing skills and knowledge and learning things, and actually helping people with their sort of digital internet stuff, and they were setting up a WhatsApp group. So it was really, really, really helpful for all of those people that were able to come along and sort of, spread that knowledge, really. So
could I just come back to you? I'm glad you enjoyed it, but I think it is essential to point out here that we can provide funding in the form of grants, which we do to quite a few things that go on in Raglan. So we can, that can be a deal breaker, can't it, if we can't resource it as a council? So that's just to point that out.
It's those little pots of money that help those groups pay sort of the weekly rent of that little hall to actually enable them to continue, really. Councillor Bond, I'm not sure whether you're first or Councillor Powell's first. So,
I don't mind, Councillor Powell, fine.
Councillor Powell, shall I bring you in first, and then Jill can come in afterwards? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been such an interesting morning, but the one thing that concerned me many, many years ago, it's lovely that people can go out and meet each other, but there does come a stage when people aren't able to go out and they stay in their own homes. And a very distant relative was living in her own in the country in a small cottage, and she was fine, but she had got a little bit confused, but she was fine there. And the local district nurse, I mean, we're going back now probably 40 years ago, but the local district nurse said she can't be on her own at all. Somebody must be with her all the time. Well, we did a sort of rota between my father-in-law and my husband. Everybody used to go, and one would stay, another stay. And of course, it got too much. We were all farming, and we didn't manage. So the district nurse, well, she'll have to go into hospital then. And she was taken into a place called St Mary's in Burgh Hill. Some people may know it in Hereford. And from the minute that she went in there, she completely lost her well-being and everything. And she became almost like a cabbage because she wasn't in her own home. And she'd have been perfectly all right if she'd been left in her own home. And this is something I think that these days is far better, because people, if they can stay in their own homes where everything is familiar to them and they're quite happy there, it's very important that we can help them stay there. Thank you. That's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you, Councillor Powell. Jane, do you want to just...
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Powell. I mean, it's so important to think about like what's happened over time and how far we've moved on, really, in terms of being able to respond to people's needs in a way that really puts them at the heart and tries to listen to what their own good outcomes are, whatever stage of life they're at. And one of the things, I mean, it's probably not particularly featured in this report, but the growth of assistive tech that we've used that really does support that, even people who are really quite vulnerable, to live safely within their own homes and still feel connected to the people that love and care about them, and making their own choices and decisions about their day-to-day lives. And that's just so important to people, and something that really runs through the heart of this.
Oh, thank you. I'm having mic problems this morning. I forgot to switch it off. Sorry about that. Councillor Bond, would you like to come in now?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the report. Brilliant report, and how wonderful to do a whole authority approach. Thank you for that. It's a great strategy. I just wonder if talking about preventative and habit forming and the Marmot principles and overcoming the lifestyle, environmental infrastructure and economic issues, it should start a bit earlier. So should the proposed governance structure or steering group include some education experts, like Will McLean or perhaps a cabinet member? Because really, for myself particularly, to overcome socio-economic factors or possibly negative factors, I don't know, that exercise, diet, not picking up unhealthy habits starts in school, or starts before that, or even starts with parents, and what happens at the home. And perhaps we should be thinking about lobbying local Welsh Government perhaps to change the curriculum or to include more social and emotional learning, maybe, and helping with people's mental health. So really, could we perhaps broaden it to before the group that you've got? I know you've intimated in some parts that it includes the earlier stages, but not perhaps education, where we could be having an impact on young people and their habits, as I say, and particularly infrastructure. The other area, infrastructure, I know I keep banging on about this, but the Fit for Life programs in our leisure centres are absolutely fantastic, but they are working with people already who have difficulties or already have disabilities or are aging, whereas if we put more money, for example, in Caldecott Leisure Centre and got more people in there, as it's been reported to me by the expert that when you increase the funding to different places like Monmouth or whatever, you get many more people attending. So that's the area perhaps that we need to be putting money to get more people to change their habits and make sure that exercise and diet and whatever becomes part of their everyday thinking. So that's the one question, please. Should we be starting a little bit earlier, and can we think about including earlier education experts and a cabinet member? And the second one is around the process mapping. You've really good what you've said about process mapping, but again, I've done it again. However, it suggests that you're going to do a gap analysis between the services you've got currently. I wonder if you can start, as you quite brilliantly just said, and totally agree with it, start with the customer, start with the actual user and say, well, we've got these users and they've got these needs. How do we best fill that? How do we best fit that? And therefore do our processes then deliver that outcome, which I think you've alluded to again, Jane. Thank you for that. But really that isn't quite how it reads. It's like we're looking at, instead of looking at what could be, we're looking at what is, and then seeing if we can find the gaps, when really we need to go to the customer, which is the user, and look at their experiences and their lived on page 28 you say individuals with lived experience will be engaged in defining needs. I said you have put it in there, but the emphasis I'm suggesting is start at the end and work backwards. And the other, that links into awarding funding. We had, you remember that the SPF funding issue that we had at the beginning of this year, we still haven't had a review of how we allocate funding and the processes we use, so we don't make any flawed decisions like we might argue happened then. So that's the second one. And the third one is really about users again and customers. On work stream access to information, advice and assistance, and work stream branding and comms. The branding and comms talks about stakeholder plan and communication plan. So this is really about a comprehensive stakeholder plan between those two groups and all the groups to make sure you identify the barriers which has been mentioned. But the problem is, if you start with what you've already got, you don't know who's being missed now, and you might lose them and not ever pick them up. So I think that's it. That links into the one other group that might not be included was in the integrated impact assessment. How will those be represented in your work? In column 3 in the stakeholder plan, there's a lot of information that you've suggested that they will be included, but it's not in the IIA. So just but it is very comprehensive, and I commend you for all the work you have done. These are just additional ideas, but quite a fundamental of where do we start. Thank you very much. Have I given you too much?
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Jane, do you want to respond?
I can certainly respond to the first couple. I might have to be reminded of the others. So the question about should this be broadened out and include children and education, because of that being the bedrock in terms of long-term prevention. You're absolutely right that starting early, making sure children get the best start in life, the first 1,001 days, all the interventions that you can do around early years and then extending that into schools is absolutely fundamental to long-term prevention. But we took a deliberate choice within our thinking at this particular point to start with those adults who are more vulnerable, or who we know are have a trajectory towards needing more formal care and support. And we did that in the first instance deliberately because we want to see some quicker impact. So this strategy has got a sort of a 2 to 5 year framework, but we did it within as an initial 2 to 5 year framework to really try and build the foundations of what we need to ensure good early intervention and prevention for adults. But we did that very much within the context of knowing that prevention, like absolutely as you say, starts pre-birth and continues through the life course. There's some really good work going on already within that area. So we've got quite a lot of prevention going on within children's services, but then back towards your flying starts, your health visiting programs and so forth within more vulnerable areas and through healthier school interventions. So we're hoping that with us focusing this particular strategy at that adult population in the context of what we know is already going on around children and young people, over time those can really start to align. And that wider context again with the Public Services Board, the Best Start in Life programs that they're starting to initiate. I think we've got to allow these things to bed in, and then where we can look for join up, really get that join up, so that we're over time developing a much broader strategy. One of the reasons why we decided just to sort of do a more focused piece of work at this point is that because from previous experience, when you've got programs that are so huge, so cross-cutting right through a life course, you can almost lose track of what you're trying to do. And I think at this point where we are in the particular sort of journey of all of this, we wanted to do a focused piece of work to develop the mechanisms around this population cohort, but very much within the context of this being just part of the overall longer term work that's going on actually right across Gwent, but also within Monmouthshire as well. I don't know, Councillor Chandler, if you wanted to come in there at all.
Just briefly to add on to that, because I totally agree with everything that Jane's just said. And within that context, because that broader public health approach to improving people's health is also underway, and it's something that is driven as much by the public health team within an Arran Health Board as much as anything else. And it is all links into our ambitions within Gwent to be a Marmot region, to look at inequalities and all the different aspects of inequalities and how we tackle that. So we see this, although we're looking at well-being and prevention within this strategy, it is very much also part of our whole agenda around inequalities, our whole understanding of what drives inequality and being a Marmot region is all about. So yeah, we do see it in that broader context, but as Jane said, in terms of this strategy, trying to create the change that we want, both initially within the council, and then as we move on, those ripples with our partners, with town and community councils, with other public bodies, with third sector bodies and others, to try and bring that together. We need to create that momentum. We need to create those tangible changes that are going to make the difference. So that's certainly how I see it. But it is a question we've asked ourselves quite a lot. But I think we're content that at this stage, this is where we need to start. And as time goes on, we have to expand the scope of this work and incorporate other work that's already being done.
Can I come in, Chair?
Yeah, I was just waiting for Councillor Chandler to finish speaking. So yeah, I think Hazel's noticed that Jane hasn't actually got Teams in front of her, so she's put some of your questions. So if you want to, ask or just to sort of pinpoint them, that's fine.
Yeah. Thank you. So in response to what you've just said, maybe obviously I read the document, maybe to explain in that document that you're not including really, and the Wellbeing Future Government Act and Future Generations Act, you really not, that isn't really isn't giving you the information for this or report, because you're talking about people who've already in issue, as it were, rather than preventing future issues. I guess when people start to have issues, then you're preventing future issues. I know, but you can't. I would know. I'm suggesting that perhaps it isn't a whole authority approach, because you're not talking about all the authority. So the authority is education is, that is part of our authority to look at education. So maybe you can put something in there to say this is 2 to 5 years report strategy. We'll think about including the actual future generations bits later, because we're on the existing generation's got issues at the moment, and we'll look at that later. So maybe that needs to go in there, because that's not how it reads. Because it reads like it's a whole authority thing, and it's, as you just said, it isn't, because it's not including those groups. So the second bit was about the process mapping, and you starting from the customer. And that obviously then links into the last one I was talking about, the work streams, about using the customer's input. Comprehensive stakeholder plan would be for all of this process, be one big stakeholder plan, I guess, and that links into the work stream branding and communication. So it's all one big thing. So you could look at it and include the younger generations as well, the future people with issues. But as I said, if you don't start with the customers, there'll be people that might be being missed, that will continue to be missed. Thank you.
Does anybody want to come back on that?
I'll just come back and then probably hand over to Nikki. I just would say, in terms of the work streams, are going to individual work streams that we're there to illustrate how we're going to take forward the strategy, and those will evolve over time. But cutting across all the work streams are some fundamental principles that we want to have, and one of those fundamental principles is around co-production, is about actually involving residents in designing and shaping those different work streams where it's appropriate. Some are a little bit more internal than others, but that fundamental principle runs through. In terms of how we're carrying them forward, I don't know whether Jane or Nikki, you want to take forward a bit more of the specifics on some of those in terms of the process mapping side of things.
I'll see what I can do. So, in terms of putting a resident at the centre of process mapping, I think again it's all about scale and where you start, and because every individual is different, but there are things that you can do to sort of aggregate up at a community level as well. I think the user's experience of being supported in this way is absolutely critical. And I don't think it's an either or. I think it is both. And I think we've put in place early mechanisms of how we can really listen to the individual to understand their experience, and how that highlights potential gaps in the preventative offer. So a good example of that is the community conversations that we're developing. So the community conversation brings somebody into a conversation with a range of support services that are available to try and understand what outcomes they're looking to achieve and how they might best achieve those outcomes. But through that process, we're able to aggregate up any areas where actually this need or this experience or this desire to achieve an outcome keeps cropping up, but we don't have quite the right service offer. So it's sort of a really good practical example of how we can put the resident at the heart and then try to sort of build up an understanding of what residents need. And another thing that we've been thinking about in terms of trying to sort of map, because if you set out to map the whole preventative community wellbeing support over Monmouthshire, all your resource would go into that. That's all you would do. So we're trying to think of how do you start in a small way to make this really meaningful. So we were thinking either to do, a particular feature like dementia care within a particular region and try to engage and map at that detailed level to see, both meeting halfway, understanding what we've got, but also understanding from people what they want to need. And I think it's like using small examples that we're going to build up the iterative learning of how we can do this at a more quicker and at a more wider level. So I don't think it's an either or. Do we start with what we've got and then work backwards, or do we start with the person and work the other way? I think it's sort of trying to bring both approaches into play, and the importance of making sure that whatever we do results in action, so we've learnt this, so what do we need to do next? And the only way I think we'll really achieve that in a meaningful way is trying to do it in a small scale and then build up. So I hope that's sort of answered or showed our thinking around what we're trying to do in terms of process mapping.
Okay, and as an experienced process mapper, I don't think it's quite as onerous as you're thinking, but then once you do it, then maybe you'll realise that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Can I go on to Councillor Butler, please?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me, lost frog in throat again. There are many aspirations in this plan, and we're in the implementation phase. I'm particularly looking at page 29. I'm looking at the work stream on community assets and facilities. And I just wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Jones was referring to in terms of working with your community and town councils, and how they are able to fund and enable wellbeing in their own wards. I know in Goitra, I'm a member of Goitra Community Council, how we enable the Lanover Coffee Club, Coffee Morning, elderly residents. We enable the Wellbeing Cafe in Goitra. So there's lovely, there's some really, really good work being done down there. But I'm actually looking on, what we want to achieve in this area. So at the moment with that, there's sort of creating a thorough overview of the known community hubs and venues. And I know that in Monmouthshire, there are 31 community venues in our estate. There are obviously far more venues than that, other village halls, other communities, probably 2 or 3 times that, who are providing these facilities, wellbeing facilities. Okay. And what I'm particularly looking at is the action to set up small collaborative working groups. I want to know, actually, I noticed that the first phase of the assessment surveys is concluding around about now. Have those taken place? We're trying to find out what makes a great community hub venue, and we're trying to develop a map illustration, geographical illustration. So has that taken place? Is it in the process of being taking place? I have to confess, I'm on the village hall in Goitra. I'm actually secretary of the community centre in Goitra, and I'm not aware of actually a survey taking place. So I'd like to know if that has taken place or is in the process of being taken place. I would like to say that actually that I've an immense amount of respect for Ash Morgan, who's the officer running this. So I'm not trying to get at Ash. I would never do that. But I'd like to know where we are with it. And I also notice the next step action is for January 26. So where are we really on this? Thank you.
Somebody want to come in on that?
Thank you. Yes, looking at the timelines, obviously those are no longer accurate, and we need to those need to be adjusted. But again, I think I know that Ash is really committed to try to take forward some of these actions. We probably need a much more critical thought around actually how long they will take. And I would go back to the point that I've made previously, and we've discussed with Ash as well. We're going to have to make some choices about how we do this. We can't map every asset within Monmouthshire. We've got to make some choices within our programme group about how we approach this. And again, I think it's like, do we Do we start small, learn how to do it through mapping a local area? I think some of the thinking is, let's think about what, through looking at some of our bigger community assets, what really makes them work, what really makes them inclusive. What do people experience when they go in? What do they need to include? How do they need to operate to make sure? But at the same time, we can't lose sight of the fact that, we've got some, big obvious community venues. But actually, a lot of the magic is happening in village halls, almost in people's front rooms at times, or in particular, hiring out a room in the leisure centre or whatever it is. So we don't want to sort of. We've got to stay big in some respects, and in other respects go small. So I think the idea of doing the what makes a great community asset is a survey that Ash really does want to work on, to get that sense from a small group, to try to build that picture. But at the same time, we might need to then go small in terms of either mapping an area to really understand either what a great network of hubs look like, how they really serve communities, or where perhaps there might be, gaps as well, so that we can start to generate in our own minds, in a collaborative way, a sense of what good looks like, what we want to replicate across the whole of Monmouthshire, and therefore where we might need to put our efforts next. So again, I think it is around this layering up, building our understanding of not just how we do stuff, but actually what the results are, and then translating that into actions, as I've said before. So you won't have seen a survey. You haven't missed anything yet. It's on the to-do list in terms of the implementation. We should have adjusted the timelines. We've got to be realistic around this, and it's a sense of frustration because these things are going to take time if we do them correctly. But we also want to see outcomes and results. It would be so disappointing if we did a lot of work and then we don't get action. So I think we've got to take it slow. We've got to be deliberate in the actions that we're taking. We've got to pull the learning through, and we've got to be then purposeful in how we build the next steps. So yeah, I think we should be pessimistic in terms of outcome time frames, but although we do want to drive action. This is really important, at a heart and minds level to a lot of people in the council. But yeah, we've got to be realistic. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. As I began by saying, there are lots of aspirations here. There's nothing wrong with aspiration, but I think you've just demonstrated how difficult sometimes it is at ground level to reach, find out really what's going on. It's quite hard, isn't it? Okay, thank you.
But what was that? It's a bit echoey. I don't know what's happened then. Okay. Just to acknowledge that all of those little groups, as we said before, in Raglan, Pumperlenny, Goitra, it's all those little groups that mean so much for those residents, and you can't kind of bottle it up, can you? That if it goes, then the loss of that interaction for those people is huge, really. And it just takes a couple of volunteers to get things off the ground, but it also takes little pots of money that people can dip into as well. So thanks for that. I see that Martin had his hand up. It seems to have disappeared. Do you still want to speak, Martin?
It's me that's reverberating. The camera should be on.
Yeah, you can turn that off.
Chair, I don't know if Maureen's got turned her mic off. Is that the problem?
No, we think it's Martin. We think it's Martin.
I think we're in the clear now, Chair. Thanks.
Right, you can carry on then.
Do you want to make a speech?
I do.
Oh.
Attempts to silence me by my colleagues.
Opposition.
I want to come back to something that Councillor Bond was talking about a couple of minutes ago, the importance and role of education here. And she's right. I've stepped back from my role as Cabinet Member for Education. And sitting on these benches up here, it's a bit strange for a time. But I am delighted that all of 1 week ago, I was elected Chair of Governors at Cross Ash School. So I am the phoenix rising from the ashes. I just hope the rest of me holds itself together long enough for me to return to school governance. One important thing we must never forget is that it's easier to talk about changing the curriculum and altering the curriculum, and we should do more of this and less of that. And forget that here in Wales, our teachers are in the middle of introducing what I think is one of the most exciting curriculums in the world for our children as the basis of their learning. And that is certainly far from an easy task, and we owe all our staff in schools a great debt for the effort that's gone in already and the work that will continue to go on till children right through from 3 to 19 are undertaken the national curriculum for Wales. It's a tremendous thing. But the bit I would add is that there is an elephant in the room, and that is that since the pandemic, too many families have stopped sending their children to school regularly. And it's quite a simple but true adage. If you ain't there, you ain't learning. And it's an absolute delight that at the school where I am now, chairing the governing body, we were looking a couple of days ago at our attendance statistics. They have still not caught up with the attendance that the school is used to over time. And parents contacting the school and saying things like, well, I work at home 3 days a week, so why can't my children work at home 3 days a week? And it doesn't work like that. And I suppose I ought to also acknowledge that it is completely within parents' rights to educate their children at home. That is a very far from easy thing to do, to put together your own entire curriculum to educate. But I've known parents who have done that very successfully and who have had a very clear vision of what education should be like. So I'm certainly not saying that should never happen. But for the vast, vast majority of children, they need to be with their friends and their peers and their community, learning that. And the lovely thing was that when we looked at our attendance last week, those who are in reception, who have about to finish their first month in school, attendance was something like 98%. And I just hope they all realise that it's not just a month, it goes on till they're 18 years old. But we have got to get over that, and we've got to get that community understanding again of the importance of education and what that does to a community. Because there is overwhelming evidence, isn't there? And I think we probably all know it, that if you are a non-attender, then the chances are that you will not succeed in education and all the importance of that for the whole of your future life. So I think that's the elephant in the room. And we, in local government, I think education is one of our major services. And long may it remain so. But we have got to get all our children back into school or being educated effectively by parents at home.
If I could just respond to that, because I couldn't agree with you more, Councillor Grocott. And But first of all, I do need to congratulate you on being Chair of Governors of Crossash School, being in my ward. Very glad to have you there. So no doubt I shall be contacting you with various residents' issues and the state of the hedge along the road. But no, seriously, couldn't agree more. And I think just absolutely within the education team, within that directorate, is that work continues after you've handed over the baton to try and reduce the level of absenteeism, to increase attendance levels, is a fundamental work of the education team, and it is the top priority. Just because it's not in this strategy doesn't mean to say that the council's not doing it, because the council's doing a lot of other things, but there's no value in terms of trying to wrap up those existing pieces of work which we know are essential, which we know are happening, to try and wrap up those within this strategy and make this strategy an all singing, all dancing thing. We want to be, you know, as Jane and others have said, to focus on what are the changes, the new directions that we want to take, and how do we need to, where there is benefit from aligning and coordinating different aspects of work. That's what we want to focus on. Be absolutely right in terms of that. Looking ahead at improving the life chances of people, tackling the chronic inequality that exists within our county and within the wider region. Absolutely, education is at the heart of it. And before education, it's not, you know, actually many of those markers have actually been laid in stone before even children get into reception. And we need to be tackling that as well. So couldn't agree with you more. But at this stage, that's other work that's going on that we're aware of that is sort of aligned with this, but not part of this particular strategy. So thank you.
Can I just add that, you know, we did have a discussion on children missing from school, didn't we? Sort of either educated at home or that children that we weren't aware of, sort of in one of the scrutinies a little while ago. So so we're well aware of the importance of children being with their peers and obviously the effects of COVID as well. I can see that Councillor Howarth has got his hand up. So, Councillor Howarth, are you okay to come in?
I am, Chair, and I just want to point out exactly where you were with your latter statement there. And thank you, Martin, just for raising that point on the children which are non-attendee for whatever reasons. And I think it was in full council with the Chief Officer's report some months ago there. I did question that again. And now, when I've heard you, Martin, as our ex-cabinet member for education, how you feel that it is a worry and a concern. I chair with the cabinet member with us today. I think it's important that we probably try and incorporate as much as we can in that. And I'd like probably from recommendations from today, we asked the senior officer to explain to us from our meeting previous to the council meeting we had on his report, which I felt was an off the cuff. Yeah, we know, but we don't know how many. Now I believe we need to explore how many are out there. So I think it's work that this committee, or whichever committee is assigned to, needs to explore what we've got out there. And I do welcome that we have the feedback into this report from that exploratory exercise. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. Anybody got any comments in response? No? Okay. Is there anybody that hasn't spoken that wants to speak or raise an issue, or are we happy with the discussion so far? Okay. So I think we've had, I can't see any hands. So I think we've had quite a good discussion about the strategy. Obviously, Councillor Bond has made a number of comments about certain things that can be taken forward for the officers to think about as well when considering any changes that they might want to consider. People have made comments about ensuring that local communities, town councils, community councils are also given sort of the credit that they deserve, really, for bolstering up little community groups and supporting their local communities. I think the group seems to be in favour of the sort of decision of travel, and acknowledging that it's a huge thing, and that, you know, we can understand why you've considered possibly sort of the emphasis being on sort of people as they age, to keep them at home and as independent as possible for as much as we can, really. So is that a fair sort of summing up? So can I thank the officers, for Councillor Chandler as well, for their report to our committee, and then we'll be moving on with the next bit on the agenda. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, committee. And thank you for all those comments, which we'll take on board for refining the paper before we take this strategy to Cabinet for final approval. So thank you. It's been very useful.
We'll just let Jane, Nikki and Ian file out, and then we'll sort of resume. Okay, I can see that the next item on the agenda is the People Scrutiny Forward Work Programme and Action List. So has anybody got any comments? Hazel wants...
Yeah, so basically you touched on home education this morning. That's there on the 25th of November, which will be your next sort of formal meeting. We were looking to see if we could maybe bring a special meeting perhaps in October or early November to look at Monmouthshire's public library strategy, and also maybe the Disability Confident Pledge, because we tend to try and table two items to each meeting. So are members happy for us to go away and look at some dates, perhaps maybe late October, early November, to bring some balance to the forward plan? And then also I was going to mention that I'm sending you an article which follows scrutiny that we undertook before on home education. I think maybe you'd like to have a little read of that. It's an independent sort of perspective on how we scrutinise that day. So, you can form your own judgments on that. That's all I was going to mention, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Can I just request that we do not have the meeting in half term? I notice that one has already been put into their special, so not from people, but if we could avoid half term, please. Thank you.
Good point.
We've got special as it is. Right, thank you.
Oh, sorry. Any other comments? I forgot to put my mic on. Oh.
Yeah, can I just ask about the issues revolving around, or what's the programme of progress with Tudor Street, please? Is there a cabinet report, or is there a recommendation? No, just because we're on public session now. Where can we go with the Tudor Street, with the group recommendations from them or the cabinet, etc.?
Okay,
Just give
I'm going to
an
ask.
update.
Thank you, Councillor Howarth. I'm going to ask Hazel to respond
Yeah, I've been chasing this up, Chair, with Nick Keys. It's not on the Cabinet Planner yet, and they're not expecting it to be on there before Christmas. I've been informed the licence expires in January, so it's important that we give them the full 12 months to demonstrate proof of concept. So Nick will speak to Councillor Callard and raise it with the Cabinet. We know there'll be quite a lot of public interest in that one, but yeah, we're not expecting a review of Tudor Street until very much after that point in January, once they've had the full 12 months.
Is that okay, Councillor Howarth?
Yeah, can we just make sure that we put it on our, let's say, planner or somewhere, so we just don't overlook it? As you know, sometimes it does get overlooked, and we have it there. At least we can jolt ourselves. Thanks, Chair.
I'm just looking at the people scrutiny action list. Are people happy with those comments and the minutes?
Chair, there is the issue which
Which
I
page?
did bring. It's reference to the recommendations. Sorry, recommendations.
On mine, it's page 111.
111.
Is that the same?
Right. Okay.
I'm not sure, but I'm taking through the action list.
Okay.
So last meeting,
Hazel's just going to take us through.
We've got two action lists, one for the 16th of July, which is to retable the rapid rehousing plan in January 2026. So that will be included on your work programme from there. And we've also got the other action list, which included some detail that we were going to chase up in terms of figures for County of Sanctuary. So we'll chase those up, Chair. So yeah, it just remains for you to have a look at the Cabinet and Council forward planner and see if there's anything on there that members would like to find out more about.
Have I got any comments on the Cabinet forward planner? No. Okay. Is it the minutes now? And then we move on to the minutes of bear with me, I'm just scrolling up the page. 16th of July. Can somebody propose and second those minutes?
I'll propose.
I've got Councillor Butler proposing. Jill, have you got your hand up?
I'm sorry, I was going to say something about the plan, and it's passed now. Don't worry, sorry. Okay. I can't say anything about the minutes. I wasn't there, thank you.
Okay, have I got a seconder for the minutes? Oh. Councillor Powell, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll second it.
Lovely. And the minutes of the 22nd of July as well.
I'll propose those as well.
I've got Councillor Butler and Councillor Powell seconding, so that's lovely. So the next meeting of this scrutiny meeting is
Tuesday 25th.
Tuesday the 25th of November, but we'll probably have a special meeting in between that dates. Hazel will look at some dates and we'll forward them to the group, and then we'll come up with a date that suits us all. So can I just thank you all for your comments and scrutiny of the two reports that we've had this morning. It's been really useful, it's been very interesting, and look forward to seeing you all in November and possibly a date in October as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.